Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our April edition of Conversations with the 100. So glad you were able to join us this evening. We have two very special guests this evening where we're going to be talking about some great topics. Our first hour will be with Dr. Mordecai Brownlee, Vice President of Student Success and Adjunct Professor with the Alamo College District, also a member of the 100 Black Men of San Antonio. Very proud to be associated with this brother. We got some great topics and some great information for you tonight. In our second hour, we're going to be talking with the great Bishop David Copeland, pastor and dear friend of our organization, where we're going to be talking about cancer awareness. And so for those of you who are not that familiar with our organization, 100 Black Men of San Antonio, we are a mentoring organization, community service organization here in San Antonio. We're a part of a greater network, 100 Black Men of America, headquartered out of Atlanta. We're actually an international organization. And we have we have the 100 Black Men of London and the 100 Black Men of the Turk Caicos Island that make us an international organization with over 10,000 mentors nationwide, servicing over 50,000 young people annually. So we're very proud of our organization, very proud of the board members who are joining us this evening. And my name is Milton Harris. I'm the executive director for 100 Black Men of San Antonio. I've been with the organization now for about 8 years. Time flies. And so it's a pleasure. My heart is dedicated to young people and paving the way for the next generation. Our motto is what they see is what they'll be. And that's why we're so proud to have brothers like Dr. Mordecai Brownlee with us, because he is a fine example of what they see is what they'll be. And so let's get into it. Let's let Dr. Brownlee introduce himself to you.
Well, Dr. Harris, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be with family to the 100. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Harris. Thank you for your leadership. To each of our board members, thank you for everything that you all provided. To everyone that's watching this, thank you. So Mordecai Brownlee served as the Vice President of the St. Philip's College. We take pride in our institution, 123 years old as of this month, and we're the only historical Black college that is a Hispanic serving institution that is a community college in the nation. Also serve as adjunct faculty for Morgan State University, as well as University of Charleston, and a columnist for EdSurge. With all that said, it's about doing good work, Dr. Harris, like men like yourself, and us using each and every one of our platforms to educate our youth and to do our part to advance our society, sir. So again, I'm grateful to be a part of the conversation on tonight, and grateful to be a part of this organization.
Absolutely. And Dr. Brownlee, I understand you're a fine example representing one of the great Divine Nine organizations as well.
Oh, the first Alpha Phi Alpha 1906 have to represent. So to anyone that's a member, and I believe that your second guest, the Reverend, is also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. So a good brother. It's going to be an ice cold night for you.
Absolutely.
Zoom.
Alpha is representing well. Proud and blessed to have you brothers on with us tonight to talk about this conversation. And so for the first hour, we're going to be looking at school and money. That's an interesting conversation, especially for our young folks, the young adults that we work with, the young people who we're mentoring through high school and middle school and even in college. College is very expensive now. Man, a lot of young folks are walking that stage, tossing that tassel, and they're tens of thousands, if not $100,000 in debt.
That's right.
So we want to have a conversation around school and money, but from a broader perspective, from everything from what it takes to attend college now. Mm-hmm. And we know that that's very important. We know that it's not for everyone. But for those who want to, attending college and minimizing that debt, maximizing our scholarship opportunities. There are, we had Nippy Betts on back, I believe, in January. He was talking about, the opportunities around scholarship. You talked a lot about the financial aid process and things like that. So we want to extend on that conversation and just give our young folks some wisdom as it relates to, school and money. And so to start us off, we're in COVID-19 season.
Yes.
It's impacted us a lot. unemployment ticked up on us. Young folks are graduating, it may not be where they thought they. And so uh, just give us a broad overview as we start this conversation of where you see things in young people as it relates to school and money.
Absolutely. So I will tell you that one of the blessings, and I will use that word intentionally, one of the blessings about us being in this region, San Antonio, Texas, is because it is an emerging market. Unlike other parts of the United States, as you look at just basic economics, look at what's happening. Really, I would encourage anyone to really study what's happening with the U.S. Census. I think about an article that I'm currently working on right now for EdSurge on this, and so that's why this conversation is fresh on my mind. As we do an environmental scan throughout the country, in comparison to other parts of the country, San Antonio, Texas is booming. So what does this mean for our students? Well, what this means is that even in the midst of the pandemic, while tourism and hospitality was significantly impacted in terms of the industry, people are returning back to their norm behaviors for the good or for the bad, but that's not the purpose of this conversation. But from an industry standpoint, their activity is increasing. What this means is that jobs that were essentially laid off or furloughed are returning back to the market. But in addition, because we're an emerging market, looking at just some of our economic clusters, manufacturing, looking at what's happening in cybersecurity, information technology, as we look at what's happening in this workforce, career and technical space, which just by the way, St. Philip's College, 40% of our academic portfolio is career and technical education. That's a bread and butter, and we have the most comprehensive offerings in the Alamo colleges. With that said, what does that mean for students? What we want to do is figure out how to pair students with opportunities. The pathway to those jobs and those opportunities come through certification and preparedness. So the conversation really needs to happen amongst mentors, amongst educators, amongst families. What is going to be the best pathway for our family to take to really be prepared to take advantage of one of these opportunities? As we look at the environment over the past 20 years, what has been proven in higher education is that the brand name does not necessarily secure you a job. Years previous, it was about, let me find the institution that has the best brand name because that will ensure me an opportunity to have a job. Well, market has shown us through the various crises that we've experienced. You look at the housing bubble burst, you look at the past 3 economic crises that we've had in the past 15 to 20 year span, pretty significant ones is what I'm referring to. We've had some blips, but the pretty significant ones in the bubbles that have burst, the market has proven the brand name doesn't ensure you anything. So what does this mean? This means that families need to make smart decisions. Choose smart. Really look at your economics. Look what really makes sense. What does not make sense is like an individual who I talked to yesterday, $120,000 in debt for a 4-year degree. That makes absolutely no sense, especially when you look at the median return income of the job market that they were looking at. You're talking $68,000 in earning. Now, $68,000 in earning is not to be laughed at. That is a substantial amount of money, significant. But did it take $120,000 worth of debt to do that? And then we're not even talking about the compounding interest on top of these loans. So it's about making smart decisions, looking for opportunities. Had the pleasure of talking with you all a few months back about scholarship opportunities with the gentleman who we were having a conversation with at that particular time. But there's so many ways, Dr. Harris, for our students to be able to have the career pathways that they deserve. And there's some very smart ways, economic ways to get that done. And we just want to be a part of them making the best decision for them and their families.
Yeah. You brought up some great points with San Antonio being in a boom cycle, and that's really good to know and good to hear because for a long time we've seen a lot of our young people, they graduate high school and they want to leave San Antonio, and so how do we do a better job of making our young people see and realize that we need their talent, their leadership right here at home.
In a large part in my personal opinion about that conversation and the strategies that we as 100 Black men and as other organizations need to look at is how do we create more experiential learning opportunities in the classroom for students? So what happens is we just look at life in general. A young individual who is looking to make a decision as to what is going to be my career field. Well, let's look at their exposures, social media, their family or their immediate circles. So what tends to happen is when you ask them, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? they're speaking from a point of exposure. Rarely do you ever hear a student really speak about a career pathway that they haven't necessarily been exposed to. So what does that mean? That means it is very important for organizations like ourselves to set up opportunities where we're bringing industry to the classroom, or we're bringing the classroom to industry. And so I know in the midst of this COVID-19 time, that's a bit hard to do, a bit difficult to do. But as we rebound as a community, we have to put some significant strategies in place to really take our students and just speaking from a population societal standpoint, our students of color, especially to be able to shift the dynamics economically within their lives and the lives of their family, to expose them to these opportunities. Because at that point, when you go to a Toyota plant, when you have an opportunity to be exposed to HEB manufacturing, when you have an opportunity to be exposed to health sciences, perhaps in ways in which you never thought possible because all you saw were doctors and perhaps plastic surgeons on television and social media. So you didn't necessarily know the gamut. When you're being exposed for the first time to management positions and understanding that you can make a significant living for yourself and realize that the kind of education, it doesn't take a just ridiculous amount of debt to have these pathways. Students don't necessarily know that. And I think the other part of this conversation, Dr. Harris, is how do we create networks for our students to realize that? Because if they don't have the network in the home or surrounding the home, then that aspect of fear and how do I get it done really comes into play. And I think that's where organizations like 100 Black Men really come into play.
Yeah, thank you for that. One example right now, the 100 Black Men, we have partnered with a nonprofit that does tech apprenticeship in IT. And they have asked us to recruit 100 African Americans specifically. Now, this organization, this nonprofit, their goal is to recruit 3,000 individuals across the nation, diverse, all races, 3,000 across the nation over the next year. But they approached us here in San Antonio because they would like us to recruit 100 African Americans here in the San Antonio community to go into their tech apprenticeship. And what they explained to us is that it's very diverse. It's everything from gaming, digital pathways, cyber, the whole network of IT. That's a broad space. And so, I've been trying to figure out the best marketing strategy to put that out there, to let the community know that this opportunity is out there. Because what the company is offering is that the individuals, be 18 and over, have at least 2 years work experience, and they will put them in a 8 to 12 week boot camp, then place them with an employer while they pay for their IT certification over the next 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
And so this is a clear pathway for a lot of our young talent out there. And many of them don't even know that they are talented enough to go into this space. And so that's a great opportunity right there.
Oh, Dr. Harris, I think we're losing you there.
Having a little bandwidth challenge, it looks like there.
Yeah, I think okay. So I'll just kick in while we're waiting on the rebound from that.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. You're coming back. At least your audio's coming back. What I would say to that, Dr. Harris, is great opportunities, right? And what I would say to others is the reality is that at one point in time, hearing of such opportunities were unicorns in themselves. It was kind of like, wow, that is very unique. That's amazing. Well, I will tell you that that's now making its way to becoming an emerging norm in the market. And it's good to see you, Brother Freeman. Thank you for your leadership. Yes, sir. So it's becoming an emergence in the industry to see these apprenticeships, these internships, these externships. And what I would tell our leaders, our educators, our families, look at what's happening in and around us. If you just study what's happening from a societal standpoint, and you look at just generational gaps and just generational curves, the baby boomer generation, by the year 2030, the youngest baby boomer will be 65 years old. Well, what does this mean? This means that youth that are in the pipeline right now, middle school, high school, are going to be entering the market where there is going to be historic retirements happening. And so this is also creating new space. So as you look at infrastructure needs within our community, the opportunities for our students to truly take advantage of so many opportunities and to be able to get in on ground floor and emerging technologies is key and very important. And so what we have to do, I believe, in our role is remove the stigmas that are associated with a lot of these career pathways where it's viewed as less than. Well, what you may be calling less than is actually more than who you think may be earning. I'll give you a point, case in point. There's individuals that I know right now that took out ridiculous amounts of debt to receive terminal degrees and have yet to peak $80,000, $90,000. Now, that's one aspect, but there's also 2-year degrees that I know that their earnings are in the 6-figure range. What does this mean? This means that somehow, some way, we have to figure out how to turn the tide on some of these stigmas that have now happened within the market and education to have students feel as though, well, if I pursue that pathway, I'll be less than. Or if I pursue that pathway, it won't be as honorable and admirable as if I select this pathway, not realizing that that pathway either A, is on the downturn or the down curve, B, it's not necessarily emerging in our market. And so you either have to A, move away or have to compete in more in-demand markets. But C, don't understand that the growth that's happening here in San Antonio, if you just look at the boom that's slated to happen here in San Antonio now within the next 10 years, the projections are saying 1 million more people are slated to come here to San Antonio and dwell here in the next 10 years. And I think actually when that was originally released was perhaps a year or 2 years ago. So the clock is already ticking and the boom is already happening, even in the midst of COVID pandemic. I don't know about you all, but I live in Converse, Texas, and I will tell you that I'm starting to lose track of how many California license plates I'm starting to see. Because as you look at what's happening in other parts of the country, people are really realizing the value of the dollar for home buying purchases and cost of living is really palatable in comparison to other parts of the country. And the opportunities are really happening here. So what does that look like for us to educate our youth to be able to really take advantage of these opportunities? Glad to see you back, Dr. Harris.
Yes, yes. Sorry about that. But yeah, those are great points. And with the defense industry being a big part of San Antonio's economy, you see a lot of tech companies that are moving into town. And so with that tech partnership that I mentioned, as we look at school and money, I think that's going to be a great lane for us to really look into. Partnering with Alamo colleges on some of those tech certifications, and then companies like IT Partners, who are the sponsoring nonprofit for that IT internship or certification program that I was speaking about before I tuned out. And so again, they want us to recruit 100 African Americans over the next year. And so we're going to be doing some follow-up initiatives here on TAAN TV about that recruitment initiative. And so for all of our folks out there, in the Alamo District and all of the folks out there on TAAN TV, if you know of individuals, even individuals that might be looking for a career change, but especially our young people, let's have that conversation with them about, cyber and digital and IT fields. There's a broad array of career pathways under the IT umbrella. And we are presenting an opportunity where you can get into that with very little to no out-of-pocket expenses, on your behalf. And then because, like Dr. Brownlee was saying, a 4-year college degree is very, very expensive. We're not telling you not to do that. But what we also are seeing is that those companies are looking for those 10-month certificates, those 2-year certifications, especially
I think that bandwidth challenge just hit again. But to his point, right? So organizations are definitely looking at, the certifications. As we just look at what's happening in the market, for those that have never heard of this, there's a term called badges. So badges are essentially short-term attainable skill sets where you can be able to attain those based off of learning outcomes. Well, Mordecai, tell me this in more layman's terms. Essentially, you don't necessarily have to go off to school to learn something. And you're also able to do it in a very short amount of time. Some of these badges are able to be earned within 8 hours. some of them within 2 hours, depends on the nature of it. Well, what does this mean? It really proves a bit of what Dr. Harris is saying. And that is I'll tell you what it means to me, transferable skill sets. You're able to take what you have necessarily learned or what you've learned and apply it in other areas. And the market is now acknowledging that more than ever and saying there's more streamlined opportunities to be able to get our students, our citizens looking to pivot into new opportunities. So grand opportunities. I think that's what you were saying, Dr. Harris.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. And I think it's telling me to shut up and let you talk more. So continue on.
It's just amazing what's happening. There's a book that I'm currently reading right now called Leadership 2030. And the book really focuses in on globalization and really takes the ages of industrialization and really says, do you realize that essentially history has a way of repeating itself, but it won't necessarily look the same. And the question becomes is internationalization and globalization over the next 10 years, as you look at what's happening in Eastern civilization in comparison to here in the United States, imagine the reality that here currently now, but certainly within the next 5 years, it'll be a norm that our students graduating from high school can sit at home, work on the computer, and perhaps be serving in China, perhaps be serving in India, perhaps be serving in other continents, right? And so this whole idea about having to physically uproot and move your families really is becoming a more distant reality. And so what does that mean? That means that our youth, especially who have these skill sets of spending, which this is a whole nother conversation, too much time on social media, but they are native digital citizens. So the digital realm for them is their norm. And so while they may miss, especially in COVID-19, the physicality of the relationships and the interactions, just as many of us have, the science and the research that's already now coming out about the impact of COVID-19 on youth is showing us that, well, if there was anyone that was going to pivot pretty quickly, it was going to be our youth because of their exposure already being native digital individuals. So what does this mean? This means that to the jobs and opportunities that you were just speaking of, Dr. Harris, and the opportunities that are making their way in terms of partnership to 100 Black Men of San Antonio and this community as a whole, what does it look like for us to, again, be able to expose our students to these opportunities? Coding is another one of those, right? It just baffles me. The skill set that's associated with the analytical abilities of our youth easily transfers over into coding opportunities, which is a whole career path in itself. But without lack of exposure, with the lack of exposure means the lack of opportunity. So that's where the barriers really have to be addressed for our ability to really educate our community and our youth on the opportunities that are present.
Yeah. In educating our youth, of course, money is a big driver. When I was younger, in my teens, just a few years ago, we was always talking about, hey, I want to make six figures. Six figures was the big thing. Six figures. If you're making $100,000 now, you kind of got an average salary. But it's nothing to laugh at, like you mentioned earlier. But it doesn't go as far as it did back then. And so, or as we educate our young people, what kind of money can they expect to make with a certification versus a college degree?
So it depends, right? So let's just talk health sciences, because health sciences in this community is booming. And again, what I would say, why is that? Well, let's just talk about societal. What I talked about is you continue to have an aging population. You continue to see a surge in health sciences, not to include increases in technology and advancements in technology. So if you look at some of, I was about to go down a path and I'll stay away from that, but I have to say this. It's the reason why I have real issues with predatory for-profit institutions, because they began to really attack certain communities with this propaganda and medical billing and coding and these other ways. But what they're charging students in order to receive these certifications is $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 worth of debt in order to take on jobs that essentially going to pay somewhere between $30,000 to $40,000. Okay, you may have some influx based on, but you understand. So we're talking about, from a clerical standpoint, certifications can prepare one to go in making 30, 40, upwards to $50,000. You get into some of these technical jobs that dealing actually in the room itself, in the operating room, right? So you're being able to be the one who is essentially, and I won't get into the terminologies because I may lose folks, but the one to lay the pads or the one to actually help and assist with the procedures. Now we're talking about someone who's now moving from the $50,000 upwards to $70,000 categories. But then as you think about some of these other certifications that prepare you to actually do healthcare administration, now we're talking about people who are being trained to be able to manage the business of health sciences. Now we've just went into a whole nother ballpark at that point because you're talking six-figure salaries. So essentially what's happening is, for those that's also been watching this, it happened in Florida. It is now happening here in the state of Texas, where the community colleges are now offering 4-year degrees. And some folks are saying, why is that happening? San Antonio College just was approved to offer a bachelor's degree now in health sciences. The reason why is because industry is now expanding and saying that some of those 2-year degrees now essentially are not relevant to the technology requirements of today. So in order to expand on the learning outcomes and opportunities, 4-year degrees now are being taught at the 2-year level. Again, Florida's been doing this for quite some time. Texas is now catching on. So as our viewers now see this begin to happen over time, you'll now understand why. But just the earning and potentials are just phenomenal. Think about plumbing. Folks don't necessarily think about plumbing. They may have a thought about plumbing, not realizing that infrastructure job itself is a six-figure position, highly in demand. You're talking about from an hourly wage rate over $100 in some cases, depending upon if we're talking residential in comparison to company or industrial. So again, the opportunities that are present for these positions that are 1-year certifications, 18-month certifications, 2-year certifications. I'll also talk about TXFAME. If our viewers have never heard of TXFAME, TXFAME. This is where the Alamo colleges have partnered with companies like Toyota and HEB, and CPS Energy and others to provide apprenticeships where they are paying students to go to school and then providing them with full-time jobs after they complete their studies. The opportunities, again, are just wide. And so we need to do everything that we can to expose our students, because otherwise other parts of the country are looking at our opportunities and they will move their children in and their families in to take advantage. So we do have a responsibility to take care of our home.
Great points, great points. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yes, sir. You're back.
And so how can the community get more involved? And even members of the 100 Black Men, how can we get more involved to motivate the students, support the work that you all are doing on campus, and other nonprofits that are creating these career pathways for our young people?
Well, I think about the work that the 100 has already been doing that I'm very encouraged by, right? So you think about mentorship. It's one of the things that I talked about early on in our conversation, the importance of creating relationships with our youth that expose them to other facets of life. That is so significant. Planting that seed will reap benefits, and 100 Black Men is an organization that understands that. So mentorship is key and should not be taken for granted. The other thing I would say is certainly working with our nonprofit organizations, and San Antonio certainly has a plethora of them, as well as chartered student organizations and charter educational opportunities and public. And so the question really becomes, where can we create these synergies where we are really looking at the numbers, taking a look at the data, taking a look at what's happening in our community, and really beginning to sit around the table, I would say electronically right now as COVID makes its way out of reality. But what does that look like for us to put our minds together and really to begin to strategically plan and pare down and really look and have a metrics from key performance indicators that we're tracking to say we're making impact. And I think really taking a look at our market penetration of our youth coming out of our communities being placed in these emerging jobs within our communities. And I think that that's one of those key performance indicators that we should really begin to hone in on. So partnership, mentorship, and then also looking at our career paths. Each and every one of us on the call that are not necessarily students, if you will, or youth in the K-12 system that are working full-time jobs, what conversations could we be having at our respective companies to talk about partnering with these organizations, partnering with schools, adopting schools, starting other initiatives in partnership with organizations like 100 Black Men to really get into the schools and say, well, listen, this is the opportunities. Let's talk to you about our career paths. What does this look like for you to come and check us out? What does this look like for us to create these additional exposures that you may not be receiving? Because again, the opportunities are that wide and our youth really need to be exposed to them, as well as our working adults who are looking to pivot.
Absolutely. Let's talk about how health disparities and health insurance ties into school and money, particularly from a perspective of the choices we make early in life that really launch or hinder our careers. You know, should our young people be thinking about, you know, what quality of life from a health perspective or health insurance for me, for my family, you know, should they think about that when they thinking about these career choices?
This is funny that you asked this because I was just talking to a young man for an hour today about this. And it's one of the things that I wish someone would have told me a bit earlier on. I think that when I first came out of college, I was so focused on just landing a job, which I can understand that's understandable. But I wasn't necessarily coached to understand the other aspects of financial planning, right? The importance of staying long enough at a job to vest and even understanding what vesting means. Understanding what does it look like to be able to shop around packages from a healthcare standpoint, as well as a benefit standpoint, as well as a retirement fund standpoint, and understanding how to match appropriately. So to go back to, I think, the essence of your question, you know, as our youth, especially that are exposed to these images of success, the question really becomes is how can we educate them without stifling them on the realities of life, and those realities being that what the images that you're being sold is actually somebody's job, and that there's a business behind these images. Now, what does this mean for you to truly understand wealth? I think about some of these books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? That really began to expand the mindset of certain individuals and say what you think is rich really isn't rich. And what you may think is poor really isn't poor, and how to make quality life decisions in a way to where your life trajectory is positive, and that your best asset, which is your body and mind, is cared for, and that you're able to ensure the sustainability of not only your life, but the life of your family. And so again, strong mentorship really, in a lot of these cases, is the game changer. Because if you think about someone like me, raised by a single mother, and just was even aspiring one day to get married, I wasn't necessarily exposed to a lot of married people. What does this mean? That means if I need to learn how to be married, I need to get around some married people. Otherwise, if the single people keep telling me how to be married, I may not get to where I want to be. So it takes getting around those that are really doing what you aspire to do to educate you on what it is that you want to do to be able to be in good space. So.
Yeah, I caught the last end of that. My connection this evening is Ivory may have to take over for me. Boy, absolutely, but great point. So, you know, it's important, and we definitely want the younger folks, the younger parents, and individuals that we work with to understand that component of it. That making a career choice, you know, you need to think about that aspect of it from a health insurance or even, you know, the health of you and your family. It plays a big role. There's certain industries that offer great healthcare options for their employees. There's certain industries that don't. And so as our young people think about the career paths that they want to take, it's important that we lay that framework for them as well. And so what about ID theft, fraud identity? That, you know, that's big now. You know, and it kind of starts in school. You know, they offer, college kids are offered, you know, credit cards. You know, with, you know, they're getting in debt with school loans, and now they're getting in debt with credit cards. Can you talk about that and how that will affect school and money?
You know, it's so important. And I would just say for anybody that's listening or watching us on tonight or today or whenever they're watching this, it's really about making good decision after good decision. And I think that what we call to be or think to be common sense isn't necessarily common. And I think that in this society that we're so fast moving, everything that we do is such at a fast pace, that even the decisions that we're forced to make are as fast paced. A lot of these fraud situations that we're seeing or ill decision making that we're seeing from a financial standpoint is based on impulsive decision. And what I would say is any real that I have found. Let me say this, and gentlemen like yourself, Dr. Harris and Mr. Friedman, y'all may say something different, but I've yet to see it to where there needs to be a grand sense of urgency, like the urgency that we bring to some of these decisions. It becomes impulsive, and so we chase it, not realizing and have not done our homework. Well, what does this mean? So looking at some of these credit cards, approvals that make their way predatorily, I would say, to our students that are of age now, 18, and they're not paying attention to the APR rates. They're not paying attention to the compounding rates. They're not paying attention. No one, and God forbid, no one maybe even taught them this. So that $10 that you're taking out on a credit card just quickly turned into $25, and they may not understand why. And so it becomes, what do we need to do to educate on financial literacy, which is huge. But number two, being able to understand that there are ways now through technology to safely make purchases in a manner that help protect your identity. I think now it makes me cringe to even think about putting a check in the mail. With just the advancements that have happened in fraud, if someone tells me to send me a check, I really get angst now, because there has to be another way to pay for this, because my information is on, and what can be done with that and shopped on the black market is just absolutely ridiculous. And I personally, I don't know about you gentlemen and those on the call, I have been victim of fraud. And so I will tell you that it's painful, it hurts. And I would also say that I've also been victim of making ill financial decisions. And so I think that the whole idea of it takes money to make money, I would say it depends. And the question becomes is what are we referring to, and have we really done our homework? Because the impulsive nature of buying and purchasing and making very significant financial decisions does not take the sense of impulsiveness that I think we've brought to it from a societal standpoint.
Yeah, we had a session with some mentees Friday before last, and one of the young men was really struggling. He's in college, one of our college mentees, and he made the statement that I'm trying to weigh whether I want to stay in school. Right now I'm just trying to keep a roof over my head, take care of my child. But he said every time I take one step forward, it seems like I take 3 steps back. And he's dealing with a little bit of depression. He just got a lot of weight on his shoulders right now. What can you share with a young man like that? Because he's one of many. They may have different experiences, but they all have a certain degree of weight on them that they're dealing with in different ways. Can you share some wisdom, if that young man or someone like him is listening?
Absolutely. So there's twofold. I would say that anyone that is feeling a sense of who needs support, please seek support. So let's start there, right? So there's no such thing as being man enough or woman enough to endure hardships in a manner that are essentially by yourself. Everyone has a certain level of grit, but everyone is also dealing with certain levels of crises and traumas. And so I would say that mental health is very real. And I think that the Black community, especially, we've had a bit of stigma for years that we're still working our way out of when it comes to mental health. And understanding that mental health, and essentially, should be viewed as wellness. Just as we go to a doctor to make sure we have a yearly checkup, it should be encouraged amongst our community to have a conversation about our mental health and standpoint. Each and every one of us have been making our way through a pandemic, and we need space to be able to have conversation and to cope and to work through this trauma. Now, with that said, what I would also say was the best advice that I ever received growing up came from my mother, who told me to manage my life like a business. And I heard her in my younger years, but I understood her more as a grown man about really the strength of what that was that she was telling me. And that is just as we run a business, there are decisions that we have to make that should be mission-driven decisions. Well, what I would tell to anyone is that the real question becomes is, do you have a true sense of who you are? Do you have your own personal mission statement? And so with my students, that's an exercise that I like to go through with them. of developing their own personal mission statements. We do that at the Alamo College. As a matter of fact, it's a part of our academic advising model. It's for students to sit down, and we call it a My Mission Statement. You need a mission statement. And the reason is, as with any business, if as opportunities come about, if you don't have a mission statement to go back and refer to, you'll make any decision in any direction, and it will have no sense of alignment and no strategy behind it. You're just chasing opportunities. And so I think that that's part of where the victimization that's happened to Generation Z and millennials in so many ways, because these images of success are thrown at them all the time. So the pressures of trying to make it through life are also being pressed upon them, yet they see these images and they don't know how to get, they don't have the infrastructure to get to point A to point B. And that in itself can send you in a downward spiral. So I think it starts with managing your life like a business. Establish a mission statement for yourself. Have goals for yourself, not just these just these wildly, goals that are out there. I'm trying to police myself here, but these wild ambitions, visions you can have. But what does it look like to have some attainable goals set? What does it look like to have some objectives set, as we would with a business? And then what conversations do we have about resource? Well, if you're coming from an impoverished situation, then let's talk about what it takes to get you from point A to point B, and what are the resources to get you out of that situation. And as with any business, there will be good days and bad days. There's a lot of entrepreneurs on this call and within the 100, but there will be good days and bad days, but understanding that the emotions in themselves can't lie to you. It's the importance of having the mission, because as you may have these bad days, if you will, really what you may call a bad day may be a day that someone is actually praying to have. So by being mission driven and living a life that aligns itself with your strategic goals and objectives, you find that you begin to create momentum, as with any business, but even in life, where opportunities really begin to make themselves available and known. And then you can sit down with your family and then say, okay, opportunity A, opportunity B, and looking back at your mission as a family and as an individual and saying what makes sense. So I think that management piece, and I would also say mentorship, this is where mentorship is key, because any incorporation, or if you will, they have a board of trustees, or they have a board or an advisory council. Well, mentors should be viewed as the same. You should have your own board, if you will. And so encouraging our youth and our those who are mentoring to build an advisory council around them. And you will receive different levels and impacts of advice, because everyone is going to give you advice based off of their realities. But the importance is to take that wisdom and to use it to shape your own reality. And so I think that with all of that combined, and truly taking ownership of our realities, that whatever those realities may be, not blaming anyone for those realities, and just saying, this is what I need to do to get moving forward, and this is what I'm committed to doing. Some very powerful progress can be made in that space.
Man, you blessing some people tonight, young fella. Now, have your own mission statement. Run your life like a business, and you should have your own board as an individual. Ooh, I think if you didn't help anybody else, you helped me tonight. That's powerful. And I think for our audience, it's worth walking through that again. Mission, run your life. Your mom, boy, that was powerful advice. It speaks volume to you that as a young man, you held that and lived your life as you got older to better understand it and live your life that way. Walk us through that again.
Yeah, so it starts with mission. So I'll use myself as an example. Years ago, I established a mission statement for myself, and that mission statement is Mordecai Brownlee empowers people and builds systems that empowers people. That is my personal mission statement. Every day when I get on my knees, start my day, get on my knees, pray, spend time with God, meditate, think about my family, think about what's going to be happening for the day. I look at that and I have a daily affirmation and mission statement that I read, and I affirm it for myself. That's what I do today. Everything that I do centers around that. From that, we then have the conversations about goals and objectives, and understanding that goals are essentially the actions that fulfill the objective. So the objective is where the strategy really happens, right? So an objective would be, I'll use myself for an example again. At one point in time, I weighed 395 pounds. This is a true story. At one point in time, I got hurt, played football, got hurt, kept the same eating habits, and I ballooned to 395 pounds. Okay. So I then early on had to set an objective for myself and say, I want to have a healthier lifestyle. That was the objective. But the goal was stay away from the buffet. They knew me on first name basis at the buffet. Okay. When you walk into a buffet and they say, "What's up, Mordecai?" That's a problem. So the goal was stay away from the buffet. The second goal was stop eating at a certain time of night. Next goal was cut out some of these sugars, but the objective was to be healthy. The goal itself was the actions. I'm using that in layman's terms because, again, as you said, Dr. Harris, this may be really helping somebody. So you have a mission statement, you set your objectives strategically, you set goals that are your actions. And it's so important that you set attainable goals and that you reward yourself, as with any organization should, with what you're able to attain. It's just very important not to sabotage yourself. So in other words, if my objective is to be more healthier, going to the sizzler should not be my reward to myself. I'm putting myself back in another situation that in itself is essentially robbing myself. But to go back to the examples, mission, objectives, goals, and then I need to set my own board. And what does that look like? So for me and my aspirations is the reason why I love and admire the 14th president of St. Philip's College, Dr. Adina Williams Lawson. Dr. Lawson, when I first met her years ago, I had never met anyone like a Dr. Lawson. I had never met someone who was as accomplished and was making the kind of impact that she was making. I wanted her on my board. So as a doctoral student, when I met Dr. Lawson, because she was a part of my research study, I said, Dr. Lawson, I don't know where life is going to take me, but I want to be able to have you as a mentor. I want to have that relationship. And she agreed. And so there's other individuals that as I've come in contact with them, I've asked, will you mentor? Can I call you for advice? Can I present things to you? And I've amassed for myself my own board. So as I go through life and go through certain situations, certain board members, just as with any business, have certain levels of expertise. So I can pull on different individuals at different points to be able to get the wisdom that I need to be able to continue to make good decisions. And I'll tell you another piece, Dr. Harris, that I didn't say first time, but I will also say this, is for heads of house, those who have families. Not only, I would encourage you not to only have a personal mission statement, but to have a family mission statement. My family has a mission statement. And as with any board, as with any organization, you have retreats. My family has family retreats where we go off and we spend time and we have fun, but we have conversations about our objectives and what we want to accomplish and how we can support one another. And we even do that with my 6-year-old son. It's a little harder with my 3-year-old little girl. She just wants to have a good time. But we involve them in that experience because hopefully we're planting a seed within them on how to have a purpose-driven life.
Yeah. Now, are you a minister?
I do what I can to help anybody I can. I think that's part of my mission statement.
That's the ministry, right?
That's the ministry.
Absolutely. And I noticed your mission statement was not necessarily about yourself. It was about helping others.
That's right.
Wow. That's powerful. And there's blessings in that in itself, because I think we are put here to give, not receive. But by giving, the world is going to constantly pour into us. We can't stop it. But when you live your life as a giver, then, the heavens open up the blessings for you. So
it comes back to you. Eastern civilization has names for it. Western civilization has a name for it. But I think the heart of it is as you plant good seed, it has a way of harvesting itself and making its way back.
Right. Wow, that's powerful. And so, mission,
objectives,
goals, have your own board.
That's it.
Now, is it have your own board or see yourself as the board?
It all depends, right? I will tell you that there are spaces where you can essentially have those internal board conversations. But I would also tell one that you may be entering in a dangerous space with that, because the reality is that we can and sometimes only go as far as our exposures allow us to go. And if you haven't had certain life exposures, the wisdom and knowledge that you have may essentially peak at a certain point. And this is why it's so important to have others who have had different life experiences to take you the rest of the way.
Powerful, powerful. Yeah, and I see that. I see that it, that's why when I started the conversation this evening, one of our themes is what they see is what they'll be.
That's
so
right.
Men like Dr. Brownlee and our president, Ira Freeman, Warren Roseburg, Ernest Jones that are on the call tonight, all of you are shining examples, and I'm proud to be, connected with gentlemen like yourself. So as we get ready to close this out tonight, we've talked about, a lot of things. I love the conversation and when you brought in, being that example and when I asked for the wisdom for that young man that was, really, really struggling, and you put it in that perspective of, having your own mission statement, and that's really a cradle that my mentors always told me you have to have something that you can fall back on, be it a scripture, be it a quote, something, because we're gonna run into those things that kind of are like the walls of life when we get frustrated. And they never stop. But what happens is we become better at dealing with them and overcoming those obstacles. And so thinking about, because we talked about ID theft, talked about fraud as it relates to college students using credit cards. Let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Have you ever experienced any students that were using credit cards to pay for their school?
Absolutely. And I would, it's dangerous, right? It takes, I would encourage anyone who's looking to finance their education to take a look and really take a good look at the interest rates. Let's just start there. Terms and interest rates. And I would tell anyone again that impulsivity to make something happen, be cautious about that. Do your homework. You may end up finding that what you would have been able to make something happen on credit cards, you would have had a better situation by taking out a personal loan at your local credit union or your current bank. You may also find that you may have qualified for some additional funding that is subsidized in nature through your financial aid package. If not subsidized, unsubsidized. But still, in a lot of cases, especially with the regulations that have been put in place over the past 10 years when it comes to student loans, because at one point in time, it was the Wild Wild West. And I was caught in the Wild Wild West of student loans, where you didn't realize you were signing up for student loans that were double-digit interest rates. So that world has now shifted itself, and it's just you can't do it anymore. Instead, there's another thing that is done, and if you want to go there, we can. But what I would tell to answer your question, be very cautious. Be very cautious. Talk to a financial planner. You can find one at your local bank. You can find one at your local credit union. Have conversations with your financial aid department at your local institution, and really weigh out the options. And if anything, look at the number, look at the interest rate, and you want to find the lowest interest rate possible. Find the low number, not the high number. Find the low number and look at your terms of repayment. And I think that there's several folks that can help you with that.
What are there any options scholarship-wise for students that have, let's just say, below a 2.5 GPA?
Absolutely. What I would tell you now, what you will find from a scholarship standpoint is more industry driven. What is your actual career path? And they're looking to fund the career path, especially in sciences, technology, engineering, mathematics. You will find that there is a plethora of opportunity there. Also, I will tell you that what's happened over time, and we can thank No Child Left Behind in certain situations like that for this, that over time, research has really proven to us that standardized testing and some of these GPAs in itself don't necessarily measure one's intelligence or their ability to be able to succeed in educational environments. So I would tell any high schooler specifically that is looking for opportunities, there are various ways to get to your desired end. When it comes to scholarships, Absolutely. Looking at what we can do to get you to at least a 2.0. And if you're not at a 2.0, looking for opportunities that are career driven to be able to at least give you an opportunity to fund the initial aspects of your career path. And once you prove yourself, then you're able to then move on to perhaps even additional disbursements of dollars. But, one of the conversations I have with students that baffles them is when they're trying to apply to these very demanding four-year institutions as an incoming college freshman and they're denied admissions, they don't realize that there are ways to get around that. One of the ways that I'll just speak to, and I'll just tell you this. So this goes back to when I was dean of students at Blinn College down in Brenham, Texas. For those that know Bluebell Ice Cream, I used to live right across the street from Bluebell Ice Cream. So this man here, again, remember my objective was to be healthier. So I had to move away from there. But one of the things all the time I was coming across, because we sent 7,000 students alone to Texas A&M College Station every year. I would come across students that were looking to get into Texas A&M College Station and their engineering program of all programs, which is very, very competitive. And students were having the hardest time trying to directly apply into the program. I says, let's look at the black and white to figure out how to get into the program. What you need to do is go to your local community college and take your first year. You can't get in as an incoming freshman, but no one said you can't get in as a sophomore. And understanding that the admissions standards for an incoming freshman are very different as a transfer student. So you may not be able to get in as an incoming freshman, but all you need is 30 hours, make your way into sophomore status, and now you're coming into the institution as a transferring student. And all you need in the state of Texas for public institutions is to have a 2.0 GPA.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, sir. We're at the top of the hour. Now we got to get over to your frat brother.
Did we lose him again?
Lose him. Did I freeze up again?
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
It does not want me talking tonight. Okay, and so we really appreciate all of you for joining us for the first hour, and we're going to transition out. We want to thank Dr. Mordecai Brownlee, the Alamo College District, for being such staples of the community. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being a member. Thank you of the 100. Thank you for representing the Divine Nine well. Got Alpha Psi's in the house. Always glad to have my Alpha brothers alongside of us. And so introduce the audience to your frat brother. Who do we have coming in next to talk about cancer awareness?
Well, I would just say that it's been an honor, Dr. Harris. Thank you, and it is an honor to introduce a man who all I've ever heard in my 5 years of being in this community is a man that has a storied history of making an impact in this community. And Bishop Copeland, it's an absolute honor and pleasure. So to my fellow Alpha brother, I'm sure you'll take him the rest of the ice cold way. So with that said, thank y'all so much. It's been an honor and pleasure, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night, sir. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for our second hour of Conversations with the 100. We have a gentleman here to talk with us about cancer awareness this evening and share his personal story. He's no stranger to most folks in San Antonio. And so, Bishop Copeland, welcome. I'll allow you to introduce yourself to our TAAN TV audience, the 100 Black Men of San Antonio.
I'm Brother David Copeland. I'm pastor of the New Creation Christian Fellowship. It's located on I-35 in Walser. We have been pastoring there for 36 years. Prior to that, I spent 4 years in the Air Force, 8 years in the Air Force as a chaplain. And prior to that, I forget how long ago that was. Anyway, so my wife and I, we've been married 45 years. About 3 years ago, my PSA number was off. So I went to get it checked out and sat with the doctor, and he gave us 3 options. One option was to take out my prostate. Another one was to do radiation. And then there was another operation that they could have done. We chose the radiation. They said that the reason why they wouldn't take it out is they were concerned about other health issues that we had. So my regimen was 45 treatments of radiation. It was, we went to a local place right off of Fredericksburg Road. We got there in the morning. We did whatever they told us to do. The actual procedure every day probably didn't take more than 5 minutes in terms of the radiation. And so now I've been 2 years away, and the other concern that I was not altogether aware of, but I would caution anybody, when you do radiation, it can affect your bone marrow. And so in the last 6 months or so, I had to go to the clinic to get a shot that will help to produce red blood cells. Prior to that, I could get a little bit of fatigue. But I've had a number of men who found out that they had prostate. It's my understanding that 1 man in 6 will develop prostate. And when you can get to a certain age and they say, well, you may get it, but there's no need to do anything about it. My own personal research has told me that it's better to do something than to just quote unquote trust the Lord. I was in Philadelphia at a conference, and one man walked up to me and he said, well, he had 2 friends. One said he was going to pray. The one said he was going to do something else. He said, and both of them went to see Jesus real quick. And he said, so I'm glad that I took the precautions. Some people are concerned about what the other after effects are. The after effects will vary. So it really depends on the condition of your health prior to the prostate cancer. What we did, I don't have it with me now, but blue was the color for prostate cancer. So we developed some blue beads, and all of my church members and friends, there were some blue prayer beads, and they prayed for not only for me, but for other folks in that particular condition. The strange thing for me is that I never felt, well, no, in the beginning, when I first heard about it, I was anxious. But once I became more aware of what the possibilities are, what the alternatives were, and we made that decision, then everything else seemed to kind of fall in place. So between trusting the doctors, trusting the medication, and praying, and in that regard, for the most part, everything has been well. Again, I have also been amazed to find out how many brothers are finding out they have prostate. It's not to be ignored. One of my consecrating bishops was Bishop G.E. Patterson. He didn't do very much medically, and I believe he died too early. So my advice or my counsel to folks is that early detection is the best. Sit with your doctor to find out which of the alternatives you feel most comfortable with. And once you make that decision, go for it. The other thing that gave me confidence is I realized I wasn't the first. And they told me I probably wasn't going to be the last. And my wife had cancer some 24 years ago. So she got through her cancer, and she's still with us. And so in that regard, I had a little confidence and trust that everything was going to be well. So far, that's my testimony. If anybody has any question, I'd be more than happy to try to respond to it.
Absolutely, and we appreciate you for sharing that testimony. Prostate cancer is very prevalent, especially among Black men. You shared the statistic of 1 in 6, and I'm not sure of the exact number for now. Is that for Black men or is that just men in general?
I think it's for men in general, but for Black men it's higher. And much of that has to do with our health prevention stuff. What we eat, whether we exercise, whether we get enough rest, all those things become incredibly important for us. And the truth is, we don't pay much attention to our diet and our health exercise until it's critical. So if you can start at an early age, you're better off in that regard.
And that's extremely key. Now, you mentioned in your testimony that a lot of Black men are just finding out they have prostates.
No, prostate cancer.
Prostate cancer. Okay.
They're becoming aware, and there are probably early detection signs. If you find yourself having to go to the bathroom a lot, and the other piece is, I probably should have mentioned it, that a lot of men I heard were afraid of the test to help you detect whether or not. Now, there's more than just the finger test. Now they can take it by your blood, take a little blood, and that can tell you. Now, I will say that once I was in the program, they used the finger, but that was only to make sure that what they had done in the other analysis was consistent. But I'd rather a 30-second discomfort than to have to cut it off 10, 15 years of your life. So that's how that went. So.
Yeah. A lot of Black males have a stereotype about the finger exam, but like you say, when it comes to something like your prostate health that affects so many other things, it's extremely important. And so let's talk a little bit about prevention that you may have insight on. You mentioned blood tests and PSA earlier. I believe the PSA is the blood test that they use to test for prostate cancer, correct?
Yeah. Let me also mention in San Antonio, they have what is the program? SARS, I think it's SARS, out of UT Health. And I was a part of that study. What I found out was they could tell me whether they detected anything, but they did not participate in treating it. So I was being, I don't know if I still have the issue, but I was doing the test for the study every year. And so when I found out I had it, I went to them and they said, well, you got to do something else. You can't go. So it was okay for the study. But they weren't able to help me with trying to work the cure. But again, I was probably fortunate because the pastor and I had other resources that I could go to get myself corrected and taken care of. So yeah, but there was a study. I think it was SABR. That's what it was. SABR. It was a SABR study out of UT Health. Yeah.
And so with that PSA exam, I think because I usually have mine done every year. The blood test, it's called a PSA, and I believe as long as you're under 4.5, they'll tell you to just watch it or whatever. It- why is it so important for men, especially African American males, where the rates are much higher, with developing that prostate cancer, to look at prevention type techniques, and what might some of those prevention techniques be that could help prevent or offset, cancer attacking your prostate?
Well, it's my understanding that some of it has to do with the fact that our heredity, that is just part of the African American gene. That's what, at least that's what they told me. But again, too many of us don't do annual checkups. We don't see a doctor. If we do, we wait almost until it's too late. But the reality is that if you care about your health, and the other piece is, not too many of us don't carry insurance. So they don't take the precaution. They don't have insurance, so they don't see a regular doctor. And as men, if something's bothering us, there's something about us that thinks, well, it's going to cure itself, or if I just wait a while, it'll get better. My father-in-law had a problem, and once they told him what was wrong with him, he wouldn't go back. Now, his statement was, you go to the hospital and people die in the hospital. Well, if you don't ever go to the hospital and you finally do have to go to the hospital, it might be too late for the people in the hospital to do you much good. One of our good members of our church, for years, it had to do with his heart, but they kept trying to get him to do stuff for heart, some kind of procedures, and he kept putting it off. Well, he had a stroke, and he was laying on the gurney, and he said, okay, I'll do the procedure now. And they said, no, I ain't no need no doing it now. It's past that. So one, I think, is fear. Two, superstition. And then three, economically, I think sometimes we don't think we can afford to do the things that are necessary to keep us healthy. And so if I don't have a good paying job, if I don't have a job that offers health insurance, if I don't take, and the other part is that single men have it more critical than married men. Married men have wives who will tell them to do what single men, nobody tells them to do. Wife said, okay, have you had your checkup? And she'll get on you. And so you go. Sometimes they just pick you up and take you and make you go. So a lot of it has to do with our taking responsibility for our own health and our own well-being. And then I remember there was this commercial some time ago, say, if you won't do it for yourself, do it for the loved ones in your life. You're also full of questions. I don't know if I can take it. I don't know. Brother Jones, you got a question?
Who were you asking?
Or brother Freeman, either one of y'all got a question?
Ernest Jones? Yeah, Ernest said earlier it hit close to home.
Yeah, it hit close to home. My dad passed, and prostate cancer was one of the things that he had going on when he passed. And I think a lot of his thing was he didn't actually want to accept it in some instances. And so that was part of the issue. But I think also a lot of the historical things that have happened towards people of color might be one of the hindrances to people actually trying to go and make sure things get taken care of. I'd like your thoughts on that one also.
Yeah. Again, I think it really has something to do with us being willing to do what's necessary to stay healthy. And I don't know, I'm not, I think I got a little bit more time here. I need to do a few things before I check out. So No, I mean, really, and
No, no, I agree.
yeah, yeah,
May I ask you another question?
sure.
Do you think there's a issue with maybe some doctors not taking maybe seriously? People complain about some of the health issues related to these areas when they go in.
Yeah, 2 or 3, maybe no, about 5 guys came to me, and they were concerned about their sexual prowess, how that would be affected. 3 of them were men that were married, and I said to them what their wives said. I said, well, they'd rather have a live, warm body than an absent body because you won't take care of what you need to take care of. Um, it's my understanding that the operation or the procedure affects different men differently. But the bottom line is, do you want to live, and do you want to have a relatively satisfactory life going on? I have one friend out of New Jersey, and we were talking. He started laughing and joking. He said, "Well, I'm alive, but I have precious memories." so, so uh, uh, precious memories is better than being a precious memory. So, amen. But Freeman,
Well, Bishop Copeland, thank you very much, sir, for entertaining our questions and educating us on this whole process. I did have a question as we relate to kind of, as you alluded to, breaking the stigma or the paranoia of going into the doctor, and sometimes I would say classify as a frustration of, hey, when I go in here, I know I'm pretty healthy, I don't have any issues, and when the doctor says, so what's wrong with you, and then instead of treating you, just takes your diagnosis and runs with it. How would you recommend that is a good way to engage with that medical professional so that you, for lack of a better term, tip the scale as opposed to getting diagnosed and treated and taken care of? Because I mean, that's been always my frustration. I go in there, hey, I'm feeling good, but I got a cold or something, and but I've been blessed in the fact that when I had my prostate exam for the, I got a clean bill of health, and he said you don't have to come back for, it was like 7 years.
yeah, right.
I mean, because there was, luckily, back to like what you said, my wife helps me eat healthy. My daughter's all over me about eating anything that's not. She wants me to be if she had her way, I'd be a vegetarian, and cutting out all of the things that are going to create some problems for me. But and again, I apologize for kind of going off my question about feeling more comfortable in that exam, in that whole process, and not leading the medical professional, but being led and getting answers.
One of the things that we try to do, for example, at my church, is from time to time we'll bring in medical professional people and have general discussions. So where men in particular won't go to the doctor, we try to bring the medical profession to them. And then when you're sitting in a crowd of 100 men and you're hearing these discussions, then you might hear enough to say, I need to take the next step. But if you don't hear it, if you're not made aware of it, you can be walking around shortening your life and not knowing it. So I think that, for example, for me as a pastor and a part of Alpha, anything that we do or can do to help men be aware becomes our responsibility. And the other part is not being afraid or ashamed to let folks that you've been there and done that. we tend to want to be real private about some of these things. But the reason why I'm willing to open up about it is because one of my least favorite activities is performing funerals. I much rather go to a baby dedication than to go to a funeral. So I guess I do it out of my own self-preservation because I want guys to live. And the other part too, and all of us might have to address that, is we got to be careful about our diet.
Mhm.
We eat a lot of grease. We do things that are not healthy for our heart. We don't get enough exercise. We don't get enough, and our stress level can be different. When so much depends on how we make a living and how well we are, that all of that impacts. It all impacts us. So, but I'm glad I'm still here, Doc. That's why I don't mind telling you.
Amen to that, sir. Amen to that, sir.
My music director, she gone on to be with the Lord, but she would often say it could have gone another way. So I'm glad it's going this way.
So you bring up an interesting process there. I mean, a concept there is as you go through all these funerals and process, and that's where people. It's back to the statement you made earlier is that a lot of people are reactive versus proactive in doing that one. So seeing that when they find out that brother X passed away because of cancer and prostate, and that's where people say, hey, look, I need to get myself checked. Do you see a higher level of conversation around those times also?
Yeah, the part of the challenge has been in the last year or so is because of this COVID, we've not been able to get together. Now, New Creation, we're kind of fortunate. We have Bible studies and prayer lines and other things that go on, so we get to communicate with people. But the other piece too is one text says something like people like leaders, or like leader like people. If the leader is willing to be open about these issues, it helps everybody else in the club or the congregation or in the community. So I don't think you get enough. I don't think you can get too much information about what we need to stay healthy and alive. In addition to that, which is a kind of off subject, not enough brothers anticipate how their loved ones are going to fare after they're gone.
Mhm.
We don't have enough guys that are having wills and insurance policies. And so, and not to embarrass anybody, but we've had to help too many folks take care of their loved ones when their loved ones are gone. So it's not only your health that needs to be taken care of, but you need to handle your business. You need to handle. Now, part of the reason why they say women outlive men is because they're gonna see a doctor. They're gonna talk to somebody about their health. And on the other hand, we tend to, think that we'll just get over it. So.
Absolutely. And it kind of alludes to the statement or question that Dr. Harris had put in the chat, where he says that Black women are 40% more likely to die from breast cancer. Black men are diagnosed at twice the rate for prostate cancer as all other races. Black men die at twice the rate as others diagnosed with prostate cancer. And are we able to kind of delineate or explain these disparities? And I think you kind of alluded to that one. One, we don't go to the doctor enough. Two, we don't eat healthy. Are there any other extenuating factors?
I don't think we follow up. If we go one time, we don't you know, for example, I make sure that I have a colon exam. Um, and if anything seems to be going wrong, I'm quick to call up my doctor and say, you need to check it out. Um, Let me see. If I see about my heart, you know, I'm not a. I served a bishop when I was in Georgia, Bishop Dell, and we were on at the convocation, and he said he didn't feel well. We had just got to the convocation. He said, "Come on, son, we going home." I said, "Bishop, we just got here." He said, "I got to see my doctor." So we packed back up, and we were living in Georgia then, but we packed up and we drove from Memphis back to Atlanta because he wanted to make sure that I'm thinking about. There's a scene in The Godfather where the guy is not feeling well, and I think he's in Cuba or somewhere, and the guy's talking Spanish. He says, "No, take me home. I want to talk to a doctor that I can understand." So I think that we don't pay enough, we don't give enough credit to the medical profession. But again, if you don't have a job that has health insurance, if you haven't taken out health insurance, if you have a family history of certain issues and you don't follow and don't track it, that can come to bite you also. So, you know, I'm thankful for my wife, because if I act like I'm gonna forget some of that stuff, she's telling me it's time to go. And so, so I appreciate all of that. So, what you drinking, man? You got that orange juice in there? You got something, Brother Harris?
Yeah, that's my turmeric water.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, turmeric is pretty good. I have really bad arthritis in my left knee, and when I drink turmeric, you know, it helps with the swelling, and a lot of that pain comes from swelling that you have when it's pressing on those nerves. So I live by that. I have to have it every day.
Now, just then, we have conditions that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And if we would talk, because somebody else might have a similar condition, and they say, "Well, I'll just get through it." And then they say, "Well, but Brother Harris is doing something. Maybe I'll check it out. If I won't go to the doctor, I'll let him be my doctor for a minute and try to see what he's doing." So
that's what they did back in the day.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, and I agree with you that we should trust our health professionals, but one thing I don't understand about the process is that you mentioned the PSA earlier, and the range for the PSA, they have it from 0 to 4.5. And it's, because my brother just went through this up in Dallas, and he did the radiation as well. He did an accelerated version over a 6-week period. And but he was really upset because he was going in. He knew his numbers were going up. You know, they had always been like 0.5, 0.6. Then all of a sudden it was 1. Then it went to 2. Then it went to 2.5, 3, so on and so on. And his doctor was just always saying, "Well, we got to watch it. We'll just keep an eye on it." Well, it got up to 3.8. It was still under the 4.5. So the doctor was like, well, let's just watch it. And so he went in a year later, and it had gone from like 3.5, whatever it was, to a 7.5. And so my question is, why don't they take more preventive actions once they see your numbers begin to elevate, even though they're under the 4.5? Because once you get to 4.5, you're in trouble.
Yeah, well,
right?
Some of it I think has to do with being sensitive to the signs. Because my guess is, and I'm not a doctor, but my guess is it didn't jump from 2 to 5 overnight. So, you know, if he found himself going to the bathroom more, if he found himself having painful ejaculations, if he found himself going to the bathroom and then 2 or 3 minutes having to go back again, all the, you know, some of that stuff, you go through it, but you're not connecting the dots. You're not saying, well, maybe this is associated with something else. So you just kind of gradually go on about your life. And then, like you said, and then you go get your annual, and what was a 2 last year is now a 6 this year. And you say, well, how'd that happen? Well, it didn't go from 2 to 6 overnight. It was kind of doing it on a gradual piece. And again, that's why I think some of us have to be more responsible to help people to become aware of the signs, aware of the possibilities. And then the other piece was when I found out that I had it, I am fortunate to have some friends that either had gone through it or knew people who went through it. And they talked to me and they said, you know, there may be some adjustments, but we still here. And you know, I just, you know, now I'm getting to the point now where if they say come back in 5 years, if I feel something in 2 years, I'm not waiting on. I'm not. No, I'm not going. Now, going back, for example, to my wife, when we found out she had cancer, the condition that they have been looking at over a period of years. And so they were giving her one medication for something else, but they found out that medication helped to slow down the cancer growth in the area that they had to deal with. So I'm saying all to say is, I don't know that we give the medical profession enough credit. And we're in America, and I think we're supposed to be able to go to the doctor if you need it. And even if you have to go to the emergency room, but if you're feeling off, my counsel is go check it out. I've got a brother who I know has some conditions, but that joker won't go to the doctor for nothing. You know, man, you gonna check? I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna get to it. And I'm telling them, if you don't get to it, it's gonna get to you. So.
And I think that's part of the reason why we, as Black males, we die at twice the rate, because by the time we do get checked out, the disease has really taken a stronghold.
Yeah.
And by then it may have affected spread to other areas, and you know.
You don't want any cancer to metastasize.
Right.
You don't want none. You know, you better get it early, because if it jumps into other organs, or other parts of your body, God help you. But now you got a whole nother animal that you got to deal with. So.
And so, at what age did you begin getting like prostate exams and the blood test?
Exams like probably in around 60. It might have been earlier than that, because I'm 70 now. So maybe 55, 60, something like that. But again, I was going to that SABOR study, and every year they say, well, you're doing good. And then it spiked. And that's when we had to do the other stuff. But I was on schedule. Every year I'd go in there. And all I had to do in the study was blood. I didn't have to do any finger stuff. So they were tracking it. But again, when it spiked, and I went to them, they said, well, we just do the study. You got to go someplace else to get the treatment. And so I went and got it done. So
Now, do you recall when they were tracking it, what your numbers averaged?
it was under two, maybe. I think the highest I remember might have been like 3.5 or something like that.
Okay.
But again, nothing to be alarmed about. But when it jumped up to, I think, a 6, 7 kind of thing, then that's when we said we got to do something about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of my concerns or perspectives is that especially as Black males, when we know that doctors know that we are more susceptible to this thing. And you got to hear me?
You froze. He froze for a minute. Yeah.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah. I can hear. I can't see you, but I can hear you. All right. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, my internet is terrible tonight. And so doctors are aware that we are more prone.
You froze again.
Yeah, Dr. Harris, I think you're gonna have to go ahead and kill your video and just stay
And
talk.
3.
Well, this is the other thing I say, that depending on the doctor you go to, some doctors may not feel it as urgent to help us as others. I don't know if I'm saying it right. So you just need to make sure you got a good doctor, man, because you back on, Brother Harris?
Yeah, I agree. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm back. I agree. I urge, especially Black males, that if they get that test and they especially if their numbers are in the 3s, that they begin taking preventive measures at that point. Because for me, that's a clear signal that there's something growing there. But the doctors are not going to act on it until you're at 4 or 5 or higher. But by then, the disease has set in. And so what I'm encouraging Black males to do is keep an eye on your numbers. And if you're in the 2.5, 3.5, start asking your doctor what you could do as a preventative measure before you get to that stage where you have to do radiation and all of that. You may have to change your diet, stop eating meat, stop drinking alcohol if you do drink alcohol, whatever it takes, because all of those things, feed cancerous cells.
Yeah. And I probably ain't the one to say this, but you gotta cut sugar off, because sugar loves cancer, or cancer loves sugar, one. And so if you got a sweet tooth, you really, and that's the other challenge, because my father-in-law, he was a diabetic. And so they told him, for example, you got to stop eating ice cream, and you got to, change your diet. But he had been doing what he had been doing for so long, it was difficult for him to change his diet. I had another member, Mexican brother, who was a member of our church, and they kept telling him he had to change his diet. He had to stop eating certain Mexican foods and stuff. He didn't pay much attention. So one day they came and they took his toe. And a couple months later, they took his foot. A couple months later, they took his knee, up to his knee. And at some point, he lost the fight. He lost, but we just, unless we think that we can go to the Lord and get miracles, some of the miracle is what you do on a daily basis. So that's about that. So being informed and acting on the information that you get becomes so critical, so critical.
Absolutely. Have any of you on the call ever heard of Dr. Sebi? Or Dr. Sebi?
Dr. Sebi? No, I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, and he was a gentleman that was cured of diabetes, and he was on his deathbed when he was in his 30s, impotent, and he went to Mexico, and this herbalist killed him. He was there for about 3 months, and that changed his life. And so he went on a campaign where he learned about the different herbs and all these type things, and he started helping people, treating them with these herbs. But what he shared with them is that they had to stop eating the traditional American diet. They had to stop eating meat, sugars. Bishop just
Isn't he the same one that the medical profession tried
went
to shut him
strictly
down?
vegetarian.
Brother Harris, is he the same one that the medical profession tried to shut him down?
Yes, that is the
Yes,
one.
actually, it was the government tried to set him down. He actually had to leave the country for a while. But with the work that he was doing, he was actually curing AIDS and everything. And it was strictly using herbs and telling people to stop eating the traditional American diet. And so I was just interested, was anybody else on the call or familiar with him?
Yeah, I heard about it, and I understand that when he passed, they tried to get all his formulas and stuff away from him, from his kids. Yeah. Well, I was doing another study some time ago, and what they said was, and if I'm paraphrasing, they said ancient medicine believed in your body healing itself with herbs and stuff. But American European medicine is like going to the auto repair shop.
Mhm.
They think if they can take a part out and replace it or cut it off, that's how they kind of do that. But I think those doctors who help us with preventative, they're more concerned about healthcare, are the ones that we ought to be paying more and more attention to. Brother Warren, you got any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I'm just taking it all in.
My screen is
I'm
freezing up.
sometimes
Can you all
kind of
hear me?
skeptical about the medical diagnosis that saying Black people are still susceptible to some disease more than other folks. I don't try to buy into that theory too much, because to me that's just undervaluing us as a people. And as long as that message keep getting fed to us, then we start to believe that. But I'm on the mindset that people are people, and people are susceptible to diseases at the same rate. So that's how I feel about that.
All right. Have y'all listened to TED Talks? You have TED Talks?
Yes, sir.
I remember one conversation where a Black female doctor was saying, she was kind of intimating that there are some medicines that they give white folks that they don't give Black folks. And that when you go in, you ought to tell them, give me the medicine you give to the white folks. Don't give me the Black folks medicine. But you got to know. You got to know what the deal is. So
Now, is that income based, white folks, or is that just in general?
I think it's racial based myself. I think, they took an oath, the Hippocratic Oath. They're supposed to do what they can do to keep you alive, and to the best of their ability. So, yeah, shucks. Anyway.
It's interesting. There's data out there that shows there was a pediatric study done on infant mortalities, and they did a study on Black children that had, I think, is it neonatal deaths?
Right.
Yeah, and the study was based on children that were under the care of a white physician and children that were under the care of a Black physician. And what they found was that the And the study was based on past deaths. So they just went back and did the research. And it showed that children that was under the care of a white physician died at I believe it was 3 times the rate of children that was under the care of a Black physician. And so when you look at data like that, I mean, the data don't lie. And so all of that has something to do with the disparities that, there's not equitable treatment in the way that we receive care. And I was listening to what Warren said, and I mean, the data don't lie. And when you look at statistic that says that Black men are diagnosed with cancer at twice the rate of all other races, and I don't see how we could say that we are all subject to disease the same. Not when we look at the data.
You gotta look at who's controlling that data though, that's being given out. But to your point, Milton, about the neonatal, here's a fact that I'm gonna share with y'all. My third daughter was a preemie. She was born 2 pounds, 2 ounces. And when she was born, the doctors, we was in Hawaii. The doctor said, African-American female babies are the strongest babies born. And they survive being preemies more at a higher rate than any other race of babies.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, whether it's a white physician or a Black physician, doesn't matter. It's, of course, they need to be doing what they need to do to take care of that baby. But so that kind of leads to why we got strong Black women, because they have a high, because they strong. They strong from birth. They strong from birth. So
right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Bishop, what wisdom, what other wisdom can you share with the men out there that may be listening, that may have some underlying issues, and like your brother that just they procrastinate or they keep putting it off. What wisdom can you share that might make an individual that's on this call or out there on Facebook somewhere say, okay, you know what, I'm going to get this thing checked out?
The question for me is that if you want your life expectancy to be extended, you got to pay attention to your life. I don't know if this will help, but they tell me that there was this fella who was in a car accident, and he was rolled into a regional hospital, and he was on the gurney getting ready to go in to get operated. And this Black woman was walking alongside of him. And he said, well, nurse, is a doctor going, a good doctor? And she said, I'm the doctor. He said, well, you won't be operating on me. So the doctor walked away, and they said, well, how could you walk away? She said, well, evidently he wasn't sick enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that until you take seriously your own health care and feel the urgency to do what is necessary to stay healthy, and I think, like Brother Warren was saying, you got to pay attention to what you hear and what you believe. And if you believe, my father-in-law didn't believe that he ought to keep coming to the doctor, and he died, I think, too young. So again, I think the older I get, the more I appreciate doctors.
Mhm.
You know, but 10, 15, 20 years ago, I could get up, I could do a whole lot of stuff. Now some stuff that I do, I think about doing it before I do it. I wasn't always, I used to just get up and do it. Now I'm thinking, all right, what is this going to take for me to accomplish it? And so my counsel, my advice is, you know your body, pay attention to your body, and get help with your body. I'm fortunate that I got a good health policy. I'm fortunate that I have made friends with all my doctors. Any of my doctors, I call them, they don't ask who this is. They say, how you doing, Brother Copeland? Because I want them to know me. My primary care doctor, he had so many patients, so he's gone to this concierge system where you pay a fee for the year, and then he says his load is reduced, but it gives him the ability to spend more time with his patients. And so I pay the fee, and so now I'm not on a assembly line kind of treatment. When I have an issue, he's got time for me. He got time for me and my wife, and I've been with him long enough so he can tell me about stuff that I was doing 10 years ago. He got that file, and he tells me now I got to do a better job. I hope my wife don't hear me. I got to do a better job of doing some of the stuff he tell me to do, but you know, I think you got to appreciate the health profession, trust them, and then the bottom line is you got to take care of your own. You got to take responsibility for your own self. If you can't do a whole lot of exercise, do some. If you can't do a lot, don't park as close to the mall as you have to. Park a little further away. Make yourself walk a little bit. Stop eating late at night. There are certain beverages that you ought maybe to stop drinking. You know, there are little things that if you do it now, it'll pay off in the long run. So that's about all I have to say. And then, like I said, our church strives to have health workshops and stuff to keep people informed, because, as I said, the least like ceremony I have to perform is and you know, if a guy doesn't take care of his health and he doesn't handle his business, his wife, his widow, and his children suffer. So you got to do certain things for others, not just for yourself. So 100 black men.
That's it. That's us.
So when they talk about 100, they talking about y'all, huh? When they tell somebody 100, they're talking about y'all. Okay.
the good and the bad.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's more good than bad, Lord.
Absolutely. We're trying to do some good work out here, Bishop, and stay connected with the community, keeping folks informed by partnering with folks like yourself. We appreciate the insight and knowledge. We appreciate you sharing your testimony tonight. Ivory, any other brothers, do you have any closing remarks for Bishop or questions?
No, I think I do want to add in, you know, one of the good programs that we have that's going on that was initiated by our phenomenal VP of programs, Mr. Warren Roseborough, which is part of our health and wellness program, which is the 100 days of health and wellness and fitness. And he's been challenging us over the last, now we're in our 6th week of it, right, Warren? I think, or going into.
I think we're on week 10, I believe.
10. Oh my goodness, time flies when you're having fun. But part of that challenge that he gave us. And I would love to extend it out to your alphas and your parishioners to join in with us as we continue on. But it's a systematic step. And one of the simple things that we're doing is drinking water and increasing that intake and creating, there you go, sir. Absolutely. And making that part of their diet and just a little bit of exercise and just not making it so it's overburdened or it's a heavy task. But I can tell you in doing some, all, or a portion of what he's done, I've lost 15 pounds since we started this program. And haven't changed anything besides my water consumption and adjusted my diet. As you said, talking about that favorite thing of sugars, my wife and I have pushed away from sugars for this 10 weeks, and it's made a tremendous difference for both of us. So I would challenge that to everyone that's on the call, that's participating, because a big part of it is your mental state and being committed to your health and wellness and being committed to make a difference in your life so you can be around for others. And so just like you said, Bishop, that you've got a passion to be here for many more years. I had an opportunity to meet one of the Tuskegee Airmen, and he inspired me about 8 years ago when he was talking about how he was still participating in the Senior Olympics. And that was why he couldn't be at an event at a certain time, because he had to go run and compete. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then he got up right after that and did a phenomenal speech on Invictus. And it's heartwarming. But here's somebody who's had trials and tribulation, has made his mark in the world, but continues to be there, not only for himself, for others. So that selfless service that we should all have.
I wanna commend the 100. I think you all are making a tremendous impact in our community, and we just need more of us. The thing that is a misnomer is not all Black men are on their way to prison. Not all of us, are taking drugs, and not all of us are beating our wives. That we've got some positive men. One of the things that I've been dealing with, there are maybe 4 young ladies, 2 of them are my godchildren. They suffer because their fathers don't do enough to affirm them, to build them up, to care for them, to help them to be valued. And I wish there was a way that we could tell Black fathers how important they are to their children. We spend a lot of time doing what we want to do. I spent today maybe 2.5 hours talking to a lady, her daughter, who's not 18 yet, found out she's pregnant. And so I said, so where's the fella? And she said, well, the fella's a year younger than the girl that got pregnant. I said, well, what's he all about? Well, he's in a home that doesn't have a father. So if we are not men that value family and value our children, then it's an ever-ending cycle. So I said that to say I commend the 100, because I know that you, along with the Alphas and other Divine Nine in the church, we're doing everything we can to tell our young men how important they are for themselves and for the future of our community. So I commend you all. I thank God for you. I generally see you at the NAACP banquet or one of those kind of things. So It's good to see y'all. And again, anything I can do to be of help or assistance, I'm only a phone call away. All right.
Yeah.
Back to you, Bud Harris.
Yeah, we appreciate it, sir. And you know, as we close out, we just want to say thank you. Hats off to you. Anything we can do to support you all, let us know as well. And perhaps we need to look at planning a fatherhood retreat.
Yeah,
You know,
that'd be
where
great.
we can talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
Let's partner with the Divine Nine and some of the churches, and you know, get 100+ fathers together, and you know, have a retreat on the importance of fatherhood.
I'm all in. Just let me know when. All
Absolutely.
right.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate Bishop Copeland and the new creation family for sharing them with us. Here with Conversation with the 100. We'll see you next